Hello and welcome to this GCSE short on kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is when an object is moving, it becomes a kinetic energy store. So this means that when an object speeds up, energy is transferred into the kinetic energy store, whilst when an object slows down, energy is transferred out of the kinetic energy store. Now the kinetic energy store of an object depends on two factors: the mass of the object and the velocity of the object. Now, velocity is the speed in a particular direction. So when you state your speed with a direction, you are giving its velocity. Now, the larger the mass of a moving object, the higher the kinetic energy store. The faster the velocity of the moving object, the higher the kinetic energy store. So what this means is that a low mass, low velocity object has a small value of energy in its kinetic energy store, whilst a high mass, high velocity object has a high value of energy in its kinetic energy store. Now the equation to work out the value for the kinetic energy store of an object is as follows. Kinetic energy is equal to a half times by mass times by velocity squared. Now the kinetic energy is given in joules, the mass is given in kilograms, and the velocity is given in meters per second. So what this means is that if you don't have your kinetic energy in joules and your mass in kilograms and your velocity in meters per second, you will have to convert your values into those units. Now we can symbolize kinetic energy with the symbol E subscript K. We can symbolize mass with M and velocity as V. So we can say EK is equal to a half mv squared. Now that's important because if you had to state this equation, you can either give it in its word form or its symbol form. Now this equation shows us that mass and kinetic energy are directly proportional. So what this means is that when the mass of a moving object doubles, its kinetic energy store doubles as well. If the mass of the moving object triples, the kinetic energy store triples as well. Now, velocity and the kinetic energy store are directly proportional. So what this means is that when the velocity doubles, the kinetic energy store quadruples. For example, when the velocity quadruples, the kinetic energy store goes up by a factor of 16. So you can work out the relationship by squaring how much the velocity is increased by to work out how much the kinetic energy store has increased by. Now, it's also important to note that the equation for the kinetic energy store can be equated to other energy store equations such as the gravitational potential energy store and the elastic potential energy store when the energy in the kinetic energy store is transferred to another energy store. So for example, when a moving object slows down because it's been thrown higher up. That's an example when you could equate the kinetic energy store to the gravitational potential energy store. So thank you for watching this GCSE short on kinetic energy. Have a lovely day.